All right, so the past couple of weeks, we've been learning a React, and we've been doing, whack-a-mole, hangman, and 6 new site projects. Today, we're going to bring that back down, and we're going to be working strictly with Django. So completely going back to Django, but we're going to use Django in a little bit different way. So in the past, we've been using templates to display our data. But just like in React, how we were in our React API for our new site API, the backend, it was returning a JSON response of like articles. In Django, we're going to want to return, instead of an HTML template, we're going to want to return to the front end, whatever it might be. But the only thing we want to return in our view is some JSON response, some JSON of data. So in the past, when we had like posts and comments, if you remember that Django project, it would display a bunch of posts and display a bunch of comments. But now we just want to not even display, just return JSON of a bunch of posts. Just like kind of like article, like an article's, the JSON response will be just like a bunch of posts. But today, we're going to create a brand new Django project, and we're going to want to return wines. I don't know if people like to drink wine. I accidentally subscribed to 2 wine subscriptions, and I did not realize they were charging me for several months. And I was getting boxes of wine sent for the past few months. So I've got a plethora of wine, I think like 40 bottles of wine that I don't drink that much. So I need to. What's that?
Is the wine good?
Yeah, it's real good. Yeah. It's not, I mean, you can get good wine anywhere. Trader Joe's is like, has awesome bottles of wine for $6.99, $7.99. Dearly Beloved Organic Earth is a good one. Left Hands, I'm just naming a few off the top of my head from Trader Joe's that are under $10. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to just return a JSON response of a wine, such as red wine, the price of it, and a quick description of it. And then starting next week, we're going to combine the 2 into one singular application. All right. So here, Thursday, I'm just going to walk through this. Don't code with me because you might get stuck, and we don't want that to happen, and we don't want you to fall behind. So just watch. This recording will be up later today, but we'll walk through it. All right.
Oh, hey, Tom, do you use the Vim extension in your VS Code?
I do not. Are you asking me to, or are you asking it?
No. I was just wondering if you did, because like some of the shortcuts you'd use kind of look like Vim.
Oh, no, I've never used Vim before. I mean, I think I've tried to use Vim, and I was like, yeah, no. I just don't want to invest the time into it right now. I mean, I hear people who like Vim. I mean, they swear by it. So I'm sure it's great. I just have yet to, invest the time into getting proficient at it. All right. So I'm in my Django challenges directory. Let's go ahead and start a new Django project. So I'm going to create a Django directory called or wine project. It's going to be it's going to display a list of wines. I'm going to cd into wine project, and I'm going to open that up into a new VS Code window. And a lot of this should be reviewed, but we're going to deviate a little bit from what we've done in the past. All right, so what's the first thing I need to do when I create a Django project? Somebody remember?
Create a virtual environment. And
create a virtual environment. And then what was that? Start the virtual environment? Yep.
Yes.
So Python -m venv venv. If everyone kind of remembers that, created that virtual environment. Now I need to go into that virtual environment by source venv bin activate. Now I'm currently in my virtual environment, and we're going to be using Django, and as well as we're going to be using a database as well. We're not going to be using the SQLite database. So I need to pip install Django and psycob G2. All right, so we're installing Django and psycob G2. What questions y'all have about how we're going to be using Django going forward?
I'm just curious to see like how it happens. Like it makes sense, but like how does Django do that? So cool,
Yeah.
let's do it.
And today we're going to do it manually. We're going to manually create all like the thing that converts it to what we need to display it in JSON. But tomorrow and we're going to kind of streamline that because there are tools and libraries that make it a little more, I don't want to say easier, but streamline that. So it's not as much code. All right. So I created virtual environment. I installed Django. I installed psycob G2. Now I need to create a Wine Django project. What's the command to create a new Django project?
Is it Django-admin, what is it, like create project or start project?
Start project.
Yep. Start project. You got it right. Project. We're going to call it Wine API because we're creating an API to send data to the front end at some point. And I'm going to use plus because I don't want to create a nested project. All right. So we have our Wine API. And now let's go ahead and create a Django app, just called Wines. What's the command to create a new Django app?
Was it
Pretty much the same thing.
Oh, go ahead.
It's pretty much the same thing, but except you start app.
So like Django admin start app.
Wait, I thought it was.
Python manage.py start.
Oh, yeah,
app,
Yep. So Python manage.py start app. We're going to call it wines because it's going to display. I don't know display. It's going to return a list of wines. All right. So we have our Wine API Django project. We have our Wines Django application. What's a good habit to get into once you create your Django app?
Create your database.
Settings.
Whoop. I heard two things. I heard create database and settings. Either or, I always like to go to settings first and come down here and add my wines project or wines app to there. And because we're going to be using a a Postgres database, PostgresQL. I haven't created a wines database yet, so I'm going to create a new Postgres database by doing create DB. I'm going to call it Wines API, maybe. Sure, why not?
I was gonna say just keep it simple, make it Wines DB or something.
All right, yeah, you're right. It looks like I already have Wines API. So yeah, let's just go Wines DB. Why not? Just keep it simple. That's not all right. So I'm gonna replace the SQLite file with the name of my Postgres database called Wines DB. And there we go. All right, so created my Django project, created my Django app called Wines, connected my Wines app to my Django settings, created a Wines DB Postgres database. Now what do we need to do?
Make migrations?
No, you got to make your tables first.
Yep. So first I need to create my tables and then I can go ahead and make migrations. So let's see. So I'm going to open up my models and here I'm going to create my wine model. And this wine model is just going to have like a name, a price, the type of wine. So like red, white, etc. And maybe a short description. So I'm going to do class wine, and this wine inherits from the models model class in Django. And I'm going to call wine name is models.charfield, and we'll give it a max length of just keep everything simple right now, 255. We'll do the price. I'll do the price also as a char field for simplicity purposes. We'll give that a length of 10. We'll do just, what is it, varietal. Is anybody like a big wine drinker?
Not really.
No.
Like
My
I drink a
girlfriend
bit.
gets my girlfriend gets the cheap stuff like Franzia sometimes.
There we go. And description, we'll make it a text field. Yeah, I go in phases. Like I'll really like wine, and then I won't drink it for 4 months. And we'll do the def under string method just to display something simple. All right. Return. We'll just self dot. We'll just return the wine name for right now. All right. That should be simple enough right now. All right. And now, as Don said, we're going to go ahead and make migrations. So Python manage.py, make migrations. Is it migrations?
Yeah, I believe it's plural.
Okay, yep. So it created our wine model. If we look into our migrations directory inside of our wine app, we have our initial migration script. It's ran. Now, actually, before I do that, I'm going to add inside my admin, I'm going to register my models to my admin, just so I might want to manually add wines using the admin panel. So I can do that by saying from models, import wine. And I don't like, it doesn't really matter when I do this. Like I'm just going to do it now. So I'm going to register the wine model to our admin panel. All right. So I make migrations, and now I'm going to migrate. I'm just going to migrate the wines app. All right. So that one ran. And now I'm going to migrate all the built-in migrations that come with Django. That includes, you know, all like the admin panel, all that stuff. So let's see. So we've got, yeah, all this other stuff that got that came with it.
Hey, Tom, can you go over what that dot register does again?
Yep, this dot register is, so in this admin.py file, this is where essentially where you want your models to display in the admin panel of Django. So I'm adding the wine model to our admin panel. So if I didn't add this here in my admin panel in Django, the wine model wouldn't show up in the admin panel. And I'll kind of show you once we build this out a little bit, we'll go into the admin panel and manually add wines instead of, you know, I don't want to see data just because of time, and I don't want to add data in the terminal just because might as well use the admin panels. Already gives us a little quick user interface to add stuff. All right. So I created our models. Now what should we do? So for our wines, we're going to want to list all the wines, list an individual wine, create a new wine, edit a wine, and delete a wine, the entire CRUD capability. So what do we usually do after we create our models?
URLs, yeah.
Yep, URLs. So I'm currently in the urls.py file within our Django project right here, Wine API. And in here, I'm going to include, the path to, let's just go to wines. And we're going to include the wines Django app.urls file, which we have yet to create. So we come down here to our wines app. I'm going to create a new file called urls.py. And in here, I'm going to do like the from Django.urls, import path. And I'm going to also import from the current directory. I'm going to import all the views. And I haven't created any views yet. And I'm going to do URL patterns equals like so, not that. And this is where I'm going to do a path. And when I just go to wines, I want it to list all the wines in the database. Wine list. I'm going to create a named route just in case. Wine list. What else do I need? So let's look here. I'm getting an error here. Wines is not defined. Why is that? Or it's views. I'm an idiot. Thank you. All right. All right. I created a wine list view method or a URL pattern that points to the wine list view method. What's next?
Make the view so it won't throw an error.
Yep, let's go ahead and make that view. So I'm going to bring over the views, not right there. Let's do it inline. Let's actually split the screen. All right. So I'm over here in my views, and this is where things kind of deviate from the old or what we've been typically doing in creating a full stack Django app. So what I'm going to do is do a def wine underscore list that takes in the request. And in here, I need to remember before we used to return, render the request, and then some like wine list.html, and then some data object. That's what we used to do, or we used to actually do wines equals wine.objects.all. So we get all the wines from the database, and then we would typically render what this data object would be like wines. Does that recall? Does that kind of?
Yeah, and then you would like access it with the template in Jinja to like render with like the weirdly formatted loops of like your item.
Yep. So, but this is where kind of things deviate. So from here, I'm going to import my models, import the wine model. So that's pretty standard. But instead of rendering, because we're not rendering anything anymore, we're not going to render a template. We're not going to do anything like that. Instead of render, we're going to import Django HTTP. We're actually going to import the JSON response class. And this JSON response class is going to, instead of returning an HTML template, we're going to pass some wines into this JSON response class, and it's going to convert it to JSON, and we'll get to that, how that kind of looks. Before I'm going to go ahead and print wines right here. But we don't have any wines yet. Should we create some wines first, just to view kind of like what this looks like? All right.
So in views, Tom, do we not need to import render?
Yeah, we don't technically need to import render anymore because we're not going to be using it. I'll just do a pass there, and we're actually going to return JSON response, and we're going to pass something in there, but we haven't gotten there quite yet. But before we go ahead and do that, let's go ahead and create some wines. Python manage.py. Let's go ahead and create a super user. Remember creating a super user? So I'm a TA preet, tom@email.com, 123. Yes. So I'm creating a super user to access the admin panel. So I'm going to do Python manage.py and run the server to actually run our server. Hopefully everything works. Not quite sure if it will. All right. So if I'm going to come over here, bring over a new tab, go to localhost, not 3000, 8000/admin. Do you all kind of remember the admin panel? So I created that super user so I can access the admin panel. So TA pre, and I'm going to log in. And Reno, when I registered the wine in that admin.py file, it allows the wines to show up here. That's what that does.
Oh, okay. So it just links to the, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thanks.
Yep. And I actually don't know if this is going to work quite yet. Let's see if this works yet. Yeah, it actually doesn't work yet because I haven't actually created the views and everything quite yet. Let's go ahead. Python manage.py shell. So I'm going to import wine. All right, that didn't work. Actually, let's just go ahead and exit. Let's not create wines yet. I'll just keep walking through, and then as we go ahead and actually, let's create some wines. Not there. I'm going to create some wines using postgresql because I can go ahead and manually enter stuff into the database. If you don't have postgresql, that's okay. What do we call it? Wines DB. So where's my wines? So I have a wines there. Oh, did it not migrate? Did I not migrate it?
Yeah, Tom, you should be able to use the admin panel without the views. So yeah, you just need your database to have the tables.
Did I not migrate it? Did I miss that?
I think you created the migration and then got involved in a conversation.
There we go. Thank you.
We ruin everything.
Oh no. Python manage.py run server. Thank you, Ankur. There it goes. Let's see, refresh that.
Question, Tom, did you add anything to your wines model?
When you say, did I add anything to my wines?
In Django, did we add a model for wines?
Yeah. There we go. Like so.
Yeah, it should be available in the admin panel. But...
let me see what's going on. That's interesting.
That's super weird. Like it's working on my end. Like I was able to add like a couple of like placeholder wines.
I missed it. Did you add anything in shell?
No, let's see.
Check settings.
Wines DB, Postgres.
Yeah, that looks solid.
Models are my models. Class wines.
Can you look at your migration scripts?
I don't think I've seen that colon.
Huh? You need to
before
remake migration.
models.
I think you did it before you.
For the models, you're supposed to use equal sign, not the
hold on. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was about. I didn't say anything.
All that JavaScript, it's doing its dirt.
Oh, yep. This is it. Thank you. There we go.
I'm really surprised it didn't say anything.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's clear that.
I totally missed it.
Python manage.py.
I thought maybe I had missed something and that this was some sort of new shortcut.
Nope. All right, let's provide a one-off fixed. Select option 1. What the hell? Here's what you do when you get into a situation like this. If you really want to.
Yep.
Was it Wines DB? Create DB.
Code switch.
Manage.py, migrate. There we go.
because it's code.
PY. So I think I probably have to create a new super user. Manage.py, create super user. Oh. Python manage up. All right, let's see if this works.
What was the password command? After create super user, it just prompted you for the username and password?
Yeah, it's your username, email, and password. And if your password is too short, it'll just give you some warnings. And all right. Oh. All right. Let's just add them in here if it's possible. All right, wines DB. See if our wines. What the hell? Am I missing something? Are my models jacked up?
Check
That's exactly what I have.
So I think like in our previous ones, we rendered the dunder string was a it returned like an actual string too. I don't think that has anything to do with
Yeah,
it.
it doesn't.
I'd recommend you just delete your migrations file and
Just remake migrations. Yeah. So Python manage.py make migrations. All right. Let's go ahead and migrate that again. All right.
Might want to actually delete the entire migrations folder because maybe in like the init something got screwed up.
Yeah. I'm gonna just start this whole thing over. Sorry for the detour.
Let's call the whole thing off.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see that too. I mean, it's good debugging practice for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure in production you can drop the database all the time.
Oh yeah.
Easy peasy, no problems, right?
Only one problem.
All right. I'm just gonna delete this. Maybe it's I don't want to like jack up everything. Python manage.py make migrations. Oh, that's always fun.
It'll remake the folder if you delete.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I've blown away a lot of DBs playing around in Django.
Still no changes directed. All right.
That's insane.
That's interesting. Should be zip API. I always forget the folder name. So yeah, wines is no longer there. Huh. Python. What if I just manually created that directory? Was it migrations?
I was thinking maybe you had a S in the views name or something because I had that problem before.
All right. So we're Google. How to reinitialize migrations folder Django. All right. Erase all migrations folder, done. Finally got it to work, although I don't know how old is this? 6 years ago. It's probably not. Let's figure out. Ankur, do you have any? Let's see. Models.model.
No, I'm not quite sure. So the migrations folder usually has a init in it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if it needs that for something, but I'm not quite sure how to get this going.
Let's see if this works. See what this file looks like. All right. All right. Migrate. Oh, that was lovely. All right. I think we may have gotten it.
Start the day over and do a beer database.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Yay. That was weird. All right.
You did it, Tom.
Finally. All right. Python manage.py runs, or I guess I'll create a super user again. Create super user. All right. I'm going to mute some people. Thank you. Super user, create super user. Not quite sure if I already, see if I already created one. All right, yep. All right. So now I'm going to Python manage.py, run server. All right. TA pre. Let's see if we can add some wines. Add wine. There we go. All right. Finally, kind of back on track. We'll go ahead and take a break in like a few minutes. All right. Let's just make sure we can add a quick wine in our database. Let's call it Dearly Beloved, if you like. Beloved. Wine price, I don't know. I think it's like $7.99 from Trader Joe's. I think it's a red blend and pretty good, cheap red blend. Let's add another. What is another good one? I think Organic Earth is a good one. I think that one's like $9.99. It's a red. Good TD Trader Joe's wine.
You don't have any Strawberry Hill?
Strawberry Hill? I don't even know what that is. All right.
You gotta be
Also
really
makes
old.
the spades.
All right. So I just want to, let's go back to our views. So here, we should be relatively familiar with grabbing the request, grabbing all the wines from the database, and now I'm just printing all the wines here. And at some point, I'm going to pass something into our JSON response. But I'm going to go over to our URLs or to our project and click wines because I want this part to print down here. And notice down here in our query set, this is what's being printed out. So I'm literally just going to wines / which if we go into our URLs, our Django project URLs, and then our Django app URLs. So it comes to wines / there's nothing coming after the / goes to the wine list view method, comes over here. The wine list takes in the request, grabs all the wines from the database, prints it, and returns a JSON response. I'm getting an error right here. That's okay. That's intended because I just want to print out this query set. So, and we'll go ahead and take a break here in a second. So this query set is an array of wine objects. But in order to pass a query set of objects through HTTP, we need to pass it in as JSON. So after the break, we need to convert this query set, this array of wines, into a Python object. And then we need to pass that Python object into JSON response, which will convert that Python object to JSON and then pass it through the HTTP. So we're going to go ahead and do that after we take a 9-minute break. So go ahead and take a 9-minute break. Be back at 10:20 and we'll keep this going. All right. So we've got a list of all wines on line 7 in our views.py file, which printing out again is a query set. But we need to convert this query set to a Python object. And this is where things deviate a little bit from what you're kind of probably used to. So in our wines app, we're going to need to create a new folder, or I'm sorry, a new file called Serializer. I think just like Serializer. Or serialize.
Serializer?
What?
Does it have to be named this? Is that like a special?
It doesn't have to be, but best practices, that is what it's called. So the serializers file is specifically we're going to create a wine serializer class, and we're going to pass in a query set into this wine serializer object, and we're going to convert this query set into just standard Python array or Python object. All right. So here we're going to import. So from built-ins, import the base Python object class. This is just like a base Python object. And here we're going to create a class called Wine Serializer. And it's going to inherit from the Python object. And again, this is just like a normal class that you should be just like a normal class object. So the dunder init, when we initialize this wine serializer, again, it takes in the self, and it's going to take in some data, which we're just going to call body for right now. And we're going to initialize self.body to equal body. And we're going to essentially pass in this array or whatever query set we're going to pass into this wine serializer as the body. We can even call it like data, whatever we want. And we're going to use this self.data in other methods within our wine serializer. So what we're going to need to do, I'm going to bring this over here, the serializer, so we can kind of see what we need to do. We're going to have to pass this wines into this wine serializer, and we're going to create a instance method called all wines, and this all wines instance method is just going to convert this query set of wines into just Python, an array of Python objects. Does that make yeah? So that's all it's going to return is an array of Python objects, or Python wines, I would say, not an array of Python objects. I literally mean an array of dictionaries, I would say. I don't want that to get too confusing.
A list of dict objects, even?
Yeah, a list of dictionaries. Yeah, of dict objects. All right. So here we're going to create just a variable called output, and this output is going to be an object called wines, and initially it's going to be an empty array. So what we're going to do, so down here in the terminal, we're going to convert each one of these like dearly beloved, organic earth, and we're going to fill them in this wines array as just regular dictionaries. So we're going to say, hey, for wine in self.data. Again, this data is going to be a query set of wines. we're going to create another variable called wine detail. And we're going to create wine name, pretty much everything that's in our table, in our wine table. What is this? Wine/wine name. Price equals wine.price. Varietal. Wine.varietal. I think that's how you spell it. And description equals wine.description. So for wine, each individual wine in self.data is an individual wine object, and we're extracting the wine name, price, and varietal and description, and we're applying it to a wine detail object. So this is an individual wine, and then we're going to push this individual wine into this wines array. So
isn't there a way to just serialize that?
What do you mean?
I mean, if you happen to change your models, then you have to refactor serializers also.
Yeah, you definitely have to do that. And there is going to be tomorrow. You're going to see kind of an not, I don't want to say necessarily easier, but a more streamlined way to do this.
This is just the manual approach, correct?
Yep, this is just the manual approach. All right, so we're appending each wine detail to this output wines. And this even could just be like wines equals just an array, but we're just going to keep it as is right there. So once it's done looping through that, we're going to return the output. So now output should be an object with a wines keyword, and that is a list of individual wines. So now I'm going to bring in this wine serializer class into our views. So it'd be like from .serializers import wine serializer. And now here in our views, we're going to create another variable called serialized wines equals wine serializer. And we're going to initialize it by passing in that initial wines query set. And we're going to immediately call, was it all wines? And invoke that. And now I'm going to print serialized wines right there and just kind of see what that looks like. Let's actually print wines and serialized wines. And hopefully, if I did everything correctly, it should work. Get out of here. So if I refresh that, okay, I'm still getting an error there. That's expected. I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to come over here. I'm still getting that issue, that error, which is fine. So here's my query set of wines. And now here's my Python list of wines. So great. Now we've converted this query set into just a regular Python dictionary with an array of individual wines. So you can kind of see all the individual wines there. Now, that is what I pass into this JSON response. So it takes in a data argument, and we're passing in our serialized wines, and it also takes in, let's say, status code. Status code, or I think it's just status equals 200. So now I'm not getting any errors. So I guess let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. So it's just 3 lines of code. And now if I come back to the browser and I refresh, now I don't get an error. I get literally a JSON response of a list of wines. What questions do you have about that?
So
That's
that,
awesome.
So that first query set, that's the wines object or the wine.objects.all.
Yes, that one that was printed right here. This
Okay.
part. This.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And just so I'm like clear in my head about it. So we have to do the serialized, well, like the all wines method, just because it is a query set, and we got to change it into a JSON object.
Yeah, we actually first need to create it. We need to convert the query set into just a Python dictionary or just some regular Python, not a query set. And then we have serialized wines right here, which is just a Python object or Python dictionary. And then we pass the serialized wines into this JSON response, and the JSON response actually turns it into JSON that enables us to display it right here. All right. There's one other thing we can do.
Hey, Tom, what's the status 200?
That just means the status, it's a successful request.
Oh, okay,
So
gotcha.
it's just an HTTP status code. All right. So if I refresh this, and if I look inside of the network tab, see if that actually comes through. You can kind of see what URL I went to. Let's bring that over. If I click on that, you can see I went to this URL. It was a get method. The status code is 200, and I can actually see the response right here, or I can see the preview as well. It's a little bit better. So yeah, I don't know what this is, but yeah. All right. And we can do something else. There's this decorator called app property. You don't necessarily need this, but it's kind of best practice when you're doing explicitly sending data as an API to the front end. So the app property is a decorator that essentially turns this all wines method into a property. So like self.data is a property. Instead of invoking all wines, it converts this all wines into you can kind of read about it. It's a decorator that for setters and getters, but it's also best practice when you're actually returning data as an API. So it turns this all wines into a property. So when you call it, you don't have to invoke it. So if I get rid of that and I'm no longer invoking it because this app property turns this all wines into essentially a property, I can refresh it and it still gets the same thing. But if you didn't have that app property there, all you'd have to do is invoke it like I did before. So
how did you import the all the files in the database, like all the wines in the database through the data variable in the init?
So how did I pass it in here?
Yeah.
So when I'm calling my views.py file, when I'm instantiating a wine serializer, I'm passing in the wines as an argument right here, which passes in as data right here.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So there is a oh yeah, I see.
All right.
So would you say that having it as a property is best practice?
Yeah, for this example, yes. All right, great. So great. We're able to get a list of wines. Let's go back to our URLs. Let's get rid of that. Let's go ahead and create, instead of a list of wine, let's do, what was it, wine detail. Wine detail. And in our URLs right here, what is this called? Int, is it wine underscore ID? All right. So very similar to wine list, def wine detail, takes in the request, takes in a wine ID. And then we can do individual wine equals wine.objects.get ID equals wine underscore ID. Just should be pretty familiar. And just like we did up here, whoa. What am I doing? Whoa. We are going to do serialized wines, except instead of a multiple wines, we're going to pass in an individual wine, and we're going to create a new serialized wine method called wine detail. So let's go back to our serializers. And in this one, instead of def all wines, we'll do def wine detail. Oh. Takes in self.
Don't forget to add property.
Yep, make that a property as well. And this one should be a little bit easier, because instead of outputting an array of wines, all we have to do is output an individual wine object. So I'm just going to literally return. Let's come up here and just return an individual wine object or dictionary. But instead of wine.wine name, the individual wine is set to self.data. So we can remove wine and just do self.data, wine name, self.data, varietal, etc. And then same with the return JSON response, return JSON response. We're passing in data as the serialized wine, status equals 200. So now if I come over here and if I go to wine 1, I get wine 1. If I go to wine 2, I get wine 2. Questions about list of wines and getting a wine detail. So the main thing that's new is this Wine Serializer class.
Wait, so you didn't have to add anything in URLs, or did I miss that?
Oh, yep. I added this wine ID right here with wine detail. All right. So let's keep going. What are some other things we have to add? So we're able to view a list of wines, view an individual wine, and that's the core of it. That's like the main part of it. But let's keep on building out this CRUD ability. So we're able to view. Now what should we use? Now what should we
edit, I guess?
You want to edit a wine? Yep, let's go ahead and edit a wine. So create a view or a URL called edit. What is it? Edit wine. Edit wine. All right. Actually, before I go to edit wine, let's create a new wine. So again, we'll probably have to do delete as well. So let's just go ahead and build out delete wine. And then the last one, /new, new wine. And let's start with new wine up here. Because once we create a new wine, we'll be able to do the edit wine relatively easy as well. So with new wine, we're going to have to def new wine, takes in the request. And this new wine, does everyone kind of remember this? If before we would have like if request dot method equals, is it a post request?
I think so.
Post. Else we would just return a form, but we don't have a form anymore. because it's not returning anything. So if request.method equals post, we're going to have to import something at the top here. Import. So in the past, when we would, in our template, HTML template, we would post something, it would just request.method right here. Did we ever use JSON.load yet or no? Nope. All right. So when it comes from like a React or from the front end through HTTP through here, it comes as JSON. But we need to convert that JSON into a Python object. So I'm going to say data equals JSON.load. So this .load will convert the request into some Python, something that's Python readable. But JSON's undefined, so we have to import JSON.
Okay, so by new, you mean you're getting the data for it from the web page and pulling it into the backend.
Correct. Yep. So if this is like a React form or some other, React form, it's being passed through this request in the body of the request. Remember how we would, when we did the login or created a new article, when we do JSON.stringify, passed in that article in the React, that's what's essentially going to be the same thing coming in here, except it's a wine. All right. And now we can create a form, and we got to create a wine form where that data comes in. And then pretty much everything's relatively from the same. We have to create forms.py. And now we have to create a from Django import forms. We're going to create a model form from .models import the wine. And now class wine form and model. So we're inheriting from the model form class meta, and this should all be relatively review, if not a refresher. And the fields we want to utilize.
Line 1, you've got a typo.
Thank you. I did the same thing again. Jeez. So we want wine name, price, varietal, and description. So that's the form. And now in our views, we're going to have to import our wine form. So from forms, import wine form to use that down here. And now we can just do like the if form.isValid. We can wine.form.save commit equals true. This is we're actually saving the wine to the database. So now we saved the wine to the database, but we have to return a response to the front end. So we have our wine. Let's go ahead and re-serialize it because right now it's a wine form. Let's go ahead and serialize it as an individual wine. So pretty much exactly same thing right here. We're re-serializing that wine, and we're also returning the JSON response, like so. I think I'm getting an error. Is it fields? There we go. And now if I refresh this, all right. Why is it doing that? Oh, that's why. So all my URLs, let's go ahead and comment those out for the time being. All right, cool. So we wine So let's go ahead and see if we can create a new wine. So how do we create a new wine? We don't actually have a form to fill out. We can use Postman to test it out. So I've got my Postman. I've got some old API in there. So when I go to wine/new, it's not going to throw anything there because that's a GET request, but I'm looking for a POST request. So I'm going to use Postman. So I'm going to go to wine/new. And in the body of the request, what is it? Wine name. Wine name equals test wine. Price equals $51.99. Varietal equals white. And description equals this is a test wine. Oh. So I'm using Postman to test. I'm creating a post request going to 8000 wine/new. I'm going to format it in JSON. And if I send this, hopefully I get a response back of this new wine. Uh-oh, I'm getting an error. Varietal, what just happened? Let's look into here. So wine/new. Uh-oh, what does it say down there? The CSRF. You remember that? We always had to have like the CSRF token in the form and the template. So that's good. So we can override that by importing from Django views decorators.csrf import csrf exempt. So we're going to say, hey, don't look at that csrf token, or don't look for a csrf token. So if I come over here, go back to Postman. Let's see if I did everything right, I should get, there we go. So I got a response back from right there. So that's my response. And you can return anything you want. I can literally just return, instead of a serialized wine, I could literally just return just like a message that says new wine created. So if I came over here, if I didn't really want to return the serialized wine, I can just return like a message. Let's see, like, I guess it'd be an object with a message that says successfully created wine. So if I did that, I can say like another wine, $45, red, and send that. So you can choose what you want to send back as a JSON response. But I kind of want to send it. I just want to send the actual wine back. So that's why I have to serialize it. But now we can actually make sure that that wine's actually submitted. So there we go. We've got our 4 wines now. All right. So what questions do you have about creating a new wine, editing a wine, or creating a new wine, view individual wine, and displaying a list of wines?
Is Postman just something you installed locally on your machine, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for testing HTTP requests.
Yep. Highly recommend it if you haven't done so already. So we're almost there. Let's go ahead and do an edit wine. So everything's relatively very similar to creating a new wine. The only difference is edit wine takes in a wine ID, and we have to get the wine from the wine.objects.get, where ID equals wine ID. Should be pretty familiar with editing a wine from before. Still, if the request is a post, we need to convert the JSON to Python. And then in the wine form, instead of just adding the data, we add the instance of the already existing wine, like so. And I think that's pretty much everything, all we need. So if I go to like wines 4 right here, so we have another wine, but let's go ahead and edit that. So if I go to /edit, it's going to give me an error because I need to use Postman to edit it. So I'm going to go over here, localhost 8000, wines, wine 4, edit. And maybe instead of it being $45, it's $79.99, and it is in fact a it's red blend. Instead of calling it another wine that I don't know, maybe it's a Brunello, and this is a good red wine. All right, and then if I click this, hopefully it works. There we go, Brunello, $79.99. This is a good red wine. And if I come back here and test to see if wine 4 is changed. Oh, there we go. Wine 4 has changed. I updated it. All right. And the last one, this one's pretty easy. We'll do the csurf exempt, def delete wine, takes in the request, wine ID, and then if the request.post or request.method equals a post request, we need to grab the wine by its ID. We can wine.delete, delete the wine from the database, and then just return JSON response. And this is where I'm going to add some data. I can say status, or I can say message successfully deleted wine. And I'm going to give it a status of 200. So I don't need to serialize anything, or I don't need to do any serialized wine or anything like that, because I'm just sending a message that I successfully deleted. I can even say like, I wonder if I can do this. Select successfully deleted wine name. So if I refresh that, there's wine 4. Now if I say delete, let's actually, let's see if this works. Nope, because it's looking for front end. So let's come over here and delete the wine 4, delete. If I click send, oh, I got an error. What happened?
Status.
Status, thank you. But I probably still deleted it. So none yep. So I already actually deleted that wine by doing that. But it just
okay to use request method post for a delete. I thought you used request method delete.
Say that one more time. Oh no, you can use the delete, but it's most of the time just generally use post request. That's what we've been using in the past. So let's see if let's do wine 3. Let's delete wine 3. Oh, not post. Let's do get request. So there's wine 3. Let's do post. Delete that wine, and hopefully I get successfully deleted the test wine. If I wanted to get all the wines again, make that a GET request. Wines like so. Come back here. I still have the 2 wines. All right. So that is how clear you send data, essentially use Django strictly as a backend with no front end templates or anything. So what questions do you have about that before we take a quick break? No questions? All right, I'm going to. All right, so now we're going to want to, just to repeat for the book or the recording, we're going to want to deploy our application to the web so it lives on the web forever. So yeah. So there are a bunch of different applications, websites that we can deploy our app to, but the easiest one is an app called Heroku, or an app or a website called Heroku. There's also Netify. You could try using like Google Cloud, AWS, but to be perfectly candid, AWS is kind of a pain relative to Heroku to get your app up on the web. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So Heroku.com. Oh, I've got a dashboard up. I'm going to sign out first. Heroku. So Heroku was purchased by Salesforce, I think last year or 2 years ago. They do have a free plan, so you can deploy, I think, up to 5 apps on your account for free. So you can read through it, but essentially you're going to want to create a new account pretty quickly and then log into that account. So let's actually go ahead and log in. So I'm going to log in. I'm just going to use my personal account. I've got Authenticator on here that requires me to authenticate it. All right. Does anybody have any questions about Heroku or anything? Or about deploying? Any questions yet? Or anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so you said we can deploy up to 5 applications for free. Are those size limited, or can it just be whatever?
No, yeah, like there is a limit to like the database that you can have. I don't know how many lines, or how many tables, or how many things you can have in your data. So there is a limit up to a point, but the likelihood that you'll hit that is rare. If you're deploying apps with hundreds of thousands of lines of code as like a test, you might want to upgrade because that's probably a pretty serious application. All right. So this is Heroku, but first let's go ahead and prepare our Django app to be deployed to the web. So if I go to like Heroku, Django app, let's see, deploying Django app Heroku. Let's see if I have it somewhere. All right, here it is. There's a link in the documentation that brings you to this website. So it's pretty straightforward, but if you mess up any part of this, your app's not going to deploy. So just be very be careful as far as like where you put stuff, and it just won't work, and you're going to be like, how the hell does it not work? And like the errors when deploying aren't that it's like hard to find like specifically what's going on. So the first and most important thing that, does anybody have a question? Oh, all right. So the first thing we need to do is our Heroku applications requires a proc file. So here's my wine project. I'm going to close everything. And on the same level as your manage.py file, you need to create a proc file. Like so. And you can kind of see it's got this like Heroku like logo. So again, this is on the same level as your manage.py file. A lot of times in the past, people would put their proc file inside their project and they're like, why isn't it working? And it's because your proc file must be on the same level as your manage.py file. Questions? Oh, all right. So the next, inside of our proc file, we're going to add the following line of text. And where it says my project, that's the name of your Django project. So instead of my project, my Django project is called Wine _API, like so. There we go. So create a proc file, inserted web gunicorn, the name of your Django project, .wsgi.
So did you just make that file from scratch?
Yes, I just created it from scratch. All right. The next, we're going to pip install gunicorn. Pip install gunicorn. So down here in the terminal, clear, I'm going to pip install gunicorn. So I already have it kind of installed. And you don't have to be in the virtual environment, but I'm just still currently working in my virtual environment. All right. The next thing we're going to need to install is Django Heroku, because we're going to be tapping into Heroku's our app using Django Heroku's like command line. So we're going to call pip install Django Heroku. So that one already exists for mine. So pip install Django Heroku. And now it says add the following import statement at the very top of my settings.py file. So at the very top of my settings.py file, I'm going to add the following code, import Django Heroku. So inside of my wine project settings.py file, at the very top line of code, have it say import Django Heroku. And at the very bottom of my settings.py file, add Django Heroku settings, this line of code. So at the very bottom, I'm going to the very bottom, line 116, I'm adding that line of code there. All right. The next thing we'll need to do is do a pip freeze and create a requirements.txt file of all of our imported settings. So I can do pip freeze requirements.txt. All right, so got my requirements.txt file in here. And notice how I have Django Heroku installed in here, as well as Gunicorn. Make sure those are installed in there. And we should be ready to deploy our application. So after pretty much, we should be ready to deploy, but let's first add a git ignore file, because we don't necessarily need to add some files like venv we don't need to add. We don't need to add our py cache files as well. So these are things we don't necessarily need in here.
Tom, I think you have.
You misspelled that.
Thank you. All right. You don't necessarily need to git ignore, but it's just good to have place these in there. All right. So we've created it, or we've prepared our Django project to be deployed to Heroku. Now, once we are in our Heroku and we're on our dashboard where our apps are, if I just click that, let's see what happens. So I've got this Mike Wines front end app. This is from, a couple of cohorts ago. But over here, so I'm on my personal account. So I'm going to create new app. And I'm just going to call this app a unique app name. I'm going to call it Oscar Wine API. Oscar Wines API. And this has to be unique. So there we go. All right. So I'm going to say create app.
Is that unique to you or unique to the entire universe?
I think unique to the entire, it's unique to the entire universe because it's going to correspond to the URL. All right. So there's a couple of ways that we can deploy it, but we're going to deploy it using the Heroku command line interface. It's the easiest. You could connect it to GitHub. So anytime you deploy something or push something up to GitHub, Heroku's connected to that GitHub account. And whenever you deploy to a specific branch, it will automatically deploy to Heroku, which is kind of nice. It kind of streamlines that continuous integration. Like anytime you just push something up to your master branch or your main branch, it automatically deploys. So that's kind of nice, but we're going to use the Heroku command line interface. So the first thing we'll need to do is log into our Heroku via our command line. So I'm just going to close out these. I'm going to deactivate just to get out of the virtual environment. So I'm going to do Heroku login, and it's going to prompt me to open up a new browser window by pressing any key and saying, hey, log into Heroku command line interface. Yep, I'm logged in. I can close this browser now. And so I'm logged in as tapreet@gmail.com. That's the Heroku account I'm logged in as. Where to go? All right. So now I can CD into my Django project, which I'm already in. So I don't necessarily need to CD into that repository. And now I'm just going to git init. So I'm in here. I'm going to do git init, which it's going to create a new Git repository for this wine project. What did it say? Okay. So initialize a new Git repository, and I'm going to run this Heroku Git remote add, or I don't know what -a is, Oscar Wines API. So this, all right. So what does it say? Warning, Heroku update available. So I could update it, but it said I set my Git repository to look at this specific repo location. So instead of pushing it to your own GitHub account, it's pushing it to a GitHub account on Heroku. And now, so I initialized it. I set up the remote location of where that GitHub repository is. Now I just need to add everything to that GitHub repository. So git add period. And I can do git commit. You should be pretty familiar with git commit. They have like AM. I actually don't know what that is. So I'm just doing git commit. It says make it better. I'll just leave it as is, like so. Great. So I've added all those new files and directories to this Git repository up on Heroku. Now when I push to Heroku, let's see what happens. It'll push to Heroku and then it'll automatically start to deploy it. So all right, it's building.
Wait, the Git projects is stored on their site?
Yep.
And that is why Git is cool.
It is not GitHub.
Yeah. So right now it's building the application and it's running through the requirements.txt. It's installing Django. It's installing Python, pip. As you can see, installing SQLite. It's installing the requirements with pip. So it's downloading all the stuff in my requirements.txt file. So it's building a like a Postgres database attached to that application. It's compressing, it's done. Now it's launching. So it says it's deployed to Heroku right now, but let's actually wait. So verifying deploy is done. Great. Heroku.com. So now I can actually visit this website right here. I can also come over here and open app. So if I open app, it opens up into a new page and it says Oscar-wines-api.heroku.com. No page found. And does anybody know why?
Because your initial URL doesn't go to anything, so you have to go to wines.
Yep. So notice here it says in my URL patterns, I can go to admin or wines. Let's just go there. Let's just go to /admin. So there, we got our admin panel up there. Let's go to wines. Wines is not so relation. All right. So what does this mean? So I deployed everything, but what didn't I do? It created a Postgres database, but
you have to make migrations. And
I need
like,
to
spin it.
Yep, exactly. I need to make migrations, but on the Heroku site. So you can run. You know how we used to just Python manage.py, make migrations, etc. You can run those commands up on your Heroku app by just running Heroku run Python manage.py, but instead of make migrations, because our migration scripts are already in our app, we've already made migrations locally. So like all this stuff, the migration scripts are already up there on our app. So all we actually have to do is migrate.
He probably doesn't need to be in Venn for this because he's not running the Django stuff locally.
I'm sorry, say it one more time, Jack. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
There was a question from Kyle about do you need to be in Venv? Oh.
No, you do not. You do not need to be in VNV.
Just to streamline the process, will we do that, do the Heroku migrate after the pip freeze requirements.txt or somewhere else in the steps?
So sorry, do we do what?
Oh,
when?
sorry. The Heroku run Python manage.py migrate. Would we do that after we do the pip freeze requirements.txt? Would we do that? I'm just wondering where we would do that in the process.
This part?
Mm-hmm.
In where I'm currently at in the process. So after you've deployed your app to Heroku, after it's successfully deployed, then you'd want to go ahead because you already know everything's working on there. Mm-hmm. Now you have to go ahead and migrate it.
Okay, thank you.
So here it goes. Python migrate. There we go. So we're migrating on that Oscar Wines API. Great. Applied all migrations, and then it just ran all these migrations. Great. So I can come over here. So there we go. We're returning a JSON, but there's no wines in our database. Why aren't there wines on our database?
Because you had them locally in your Postgres database, but you would need to like dump your DB and upload it and then load it in up there too.
Exactly. So the wines I was getting were in my local database on my local machine, like right here. So if I refresh that, these are all the wines locally. When I deployed the app, it created a totally separate database that's actually up in Heroku. They actually use AWS to run all our apps at. You can actually figure out like where our apps are running on our AWS. But there's no Postgres database. There's nothing in the Postgres database up on Heroku. So we can create some. How do we go about creating new wines? What URL should we? I'm sorry?
The admin panel.
We can go through the admin panel, definitely. We can also use Postman. So I'm over here in Postman, and here is the URL to my app, Oscar Wines api.heroku.com/wines. So if I use this URL, instead of this localhost, if I go to wine/new and do a post request, and I'm making a post request to new, and I'm going to just upload this one, this Brunello. This is a good red wine. I'll say on Heroku, just why not? And if I send this, let's see what response I get back. And hopefully if everything's good, I get that response back. There we go. I've got that response back. Now, if I come over here and click enter to do a refresh, I've got my wine on my herokuapp.com right there. Let's go ahead and add it in the admin panel. So I can see all the wines there. I can also visit the wines right there. There's the individual wine. But if I wanted it to add it via the admin panel, I'm over here. What do I need to do? Let's actually go to my, if I wanted to go to admin. So I need to create a super user. I created a super user on my local machine, but I need to create a super user up on my Heroku app. So how do I go about? Someone have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So as far as you adding, I guess, the JSON to your web page, what's stopping someone else from just doing the same thing? Is there a login between you and doing that?
What's preventing somebody from visiting this website?
No, not the admin, but the previous. Yeah, there. Yes.
Nothing. If I'm going to post this in the Oscars channel. If you visit this webpage, you can go to it and display. You can use this API endpoint as is. So if you click on that link, does everyone kind of see that? Or
yeah, I'm on it.
Yeah. So everyone has access to this now. And that's fine because it's up on the internet. Now, if you want to add some security, add some login, add some front-end verification that prevents just some random person coming on here, you can go ahead and do that. But for all intents and purposes, anybody on the web can visit this now.
So they host your stuff for free?
Yep. Up to 5 apps. You can create up to 5 apps for free. All right.
So you could use this to like make web pages or something?
Exactly. Yep. And then that's what a lot of developers do. They use Heroku to host their personal projects, link to them, and stuff like that. All right. Well, let's get back to creating some wines. Instead of using Postman, let's go ahead and use the admin panel.
So you can do Heroku run Python manage PY create super user.
Yep, exactly, Don. So Python, so Heroku run Python manage.py create super user. And you're going to see, it's going to be interesting. You're going to see what the default username is. So it's running Python manage.py create super user. So it's connected. So here's the username, U45657. So that's the default username. I'm just going to use my default username. I'm just going to say Tom. Tom@email.com. 123, 123. So now everyone has access to my dashboard. So if everyone online can right now can go to admin.com and type in Tom123 as the password and enter. So it's logging in. Never. I'm going to add a wine. Tom's wine price $15.99. red, Tom's favorite wine, and I can save that. So it could take a little while to save. So anybody can go to the admin panel and add their own wine right now. If you know my name, Tom, password is 123. Does anybody want to go add some wines?
Already on it.
All right. So now if I go back to wines. All right, great. I've got Tom's wine. Let's go ahead and see if we can edit a wine. I'm going to use Postman to edit wine number 2. So I'm going to go to wine 2. I'm going to just do a get request just to make sure I get wine 2, which is Tom's favorite wine right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and edit that wine. So instead of, I'm going to make that a post request. I'm going to say this is going to, instead of being red, it's going to be a red blend. And $15.99, it's too much. I'm going to do $9.99. Tom's favorite wine test. And if I post that, Tom's favorite wine test, Tom's wine. Now if I come over here and refresh it, cool, I've got Reno's wine. Here's my updated wine. I've got Esca de Perio, blah, 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 I don't know. But yeah, so there we go. And I can visit wine, you know, Reno's wine, wine 3. I'm guessing, I don't know, is that Jack's wine? You're kind of, you're on mute, but.
It's a really good Spanish wine.
Nice.
I'm a huge fan of it.
Awesome. Do you like Tempranillo? Because that's a Spanish wine too, yeah.
Oh yeah, Tempranillo is awesome. Like the Argentinian stuff is also dope. Like you can get some really good like Spanish and like South American red wines. I love them.
Nice. Awesome. So there we go. We got more. We got $2 Chuck, even better. Boone's Farm. There we go. All right. So with that, I will go ahead, and that's how you can deploy your backend to the web. The front end is very similar. If you wanted to deploy a front end application, it's very similar, but we'll get to that next week. So I'm gonna